All right, guys. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Andrew Postell. He is the Vice President of Mortgage Lending for Guaranteed Rate. Before we jump straight in and introduce him, I just want to say before we get started, if you like the show, you enjoy it, we don't run ads, please, the only fee that we have is if you learn something and you enjoy it, please share the show with your friends, family, other investors, and of course, leave us a rating on, whatever platform you're listening to, iTunes or Spotify. So, all right, let's jump in. So today I've got Misty with me. Andrew's here. So Andrew is an experienced investor as well. So I wanted to, talk about, well, not us talk about, but him talk about himself and hear what he's, share some stories and all that. So let's start at the top though. Let's talk about how you got started in mortgages. And of course, as an investor, just kind of, rewind. I know you've been doing it for a long time. So rewind and start from the beginning.
Ooh, the beginning, an origin story. I love it. All right. First, thanks for having me. It's a great honor for me to be here. So when I grew up, my family moved, I think, 18 times by the time I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And it was common for us to go on in the car, hey, let's go look at the old house, or go to this older state and go visit our old friends, Oh, hey, Dad, here's the old house. How much is the house worth? And Dad would be like, oh, it's like $300,000. And I'll be like, oh, that's so cool. So our mentality in the home, nobody knew any better. You sell your house, you go move in your new home.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle, though, he moved around a lot. He served in Nam, but he kept all of his homes.
Oh.
And he had seven homes. And we were fine. I don't want to make this sob story. We were very fine, had a loving family, everything was cool. But my uncle, he was a lot different, a lot different. And I thought, if I'm going to try to do anything, I'm going to try to do what he did. And just, if I ever move, I'm going to keep my home. So that's where it started. Mm-hmm. So my first home I purchased in 2000. $52,000, and it was a home that I house hacked. I lived in one room, rented out two other rooms. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home that I bought for $52,000.
Was that scary? I gotta ask.
No, it was awesome. It was completely
were you nervous?
Awesome. No. So when you're young, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so everything is cool. There was no hesitation on me. I just knew I had to do it, and I got in a low down payment program, my low interest rate, hardly anything out of pocket, and I used it. And I rented it out to my friends. We had great parties. And
that's why.
Yeah. I mean, it was so great. So not only did I have a financial benefit of having a piece of real estate that I had financial gain from, I had great memories too.
Yeah.
And plus some of my friends, they got into tough binds. Hey, come stay with me. You're in a safe place here. So I used it for many years. After I moved out, I moved to New York City. I kept it and rented it out full time, room by room. So I didn't rent it out for one home, rented it out room by room. That was my first rental property.
And that was here in Texas?
No.
Florida, right?
Florida.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So when I lived in New York City, I couldn't invest in New York City. I had to still stay in Florida. I had people that I knew. They would manage my property, insurance agents. I had a good network of people. In New York City, it was too hard, too impossible to do it. So even though I moved out of the state and I was in a difficult place, I kept investing. So I've been doing real estate for 20 years. I've been a loan officer 12, I think. So my second home, when I really started to try to use investing techniques, but remember, this was before podcasts. This is before the internet,
There was no information out there.
There was nothing. There was nothing. I actually went to the library to check out a book, and the book was 8 years old. It was already outdated. I was like, this is trash. It doesn't work anymore. I actually found a multifamily investment company, the best way I knew how to do it. And I called, hey, how can I get, takes $250,000, dude. Who has $250,000?
Yeah,
I certainly didn't. So the information age and the internet and all these great tools that we have now allow it to be more accessible to the average person. Now we can control our own destiny. But at the time, I still didn't know very much. So my second property I purchased for $7,000. And I purchased it for $7,000 because I was like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to make mistakes. If I make one, at least it'll be small. So I bought it for $7,000. I put $23,000 into it. This is my life savings. This is all I had.
Yeah.
And after it was all fixed up, it was worth $30,000. Ooh. And if you're listening at home, you're not supposed to do that. That's not what you right. However, if I had to go back and do it again, I would do it again.
Yeah.
Back then, because I learned so much from that home. I had to use all of those tools, and this was during the housing crisis too. At this point, this is housing crisis time. So now, not only do I have an investment property that I learned lessons from, I learned during a difficult, challenging economic time that will continue to repeat through my lifetime. Every 10 years or so,
Yeah.
something like this will happen. This is my third recession period, whatever you want to call it, and I'm still investing today. So all those lessons that I had then, I'm implementing them now. The biggest, scariest story that I have actually occurred during the housing crisis. So in 2007, my wife and I, we went and toured this neighborhood. A builder was building homes, and hey, here's our new homes. We're selling from 175, and we, that sounds good. Okay, cool. But we didn't do it. A year later, 2008, they call us. Hey, we saw that you toured our properties last year. We had a financing fall through. Would you like to see the home? We're not selling for 175. Now we're selling for 135.
Dropped it.
Mm-hmm. My conversation with my wife, word for word, it was like verbatim. Hey, prices have gone down, but probably won't go down much further, right? We offered 130. We settled on 132.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this was a home we bought for zero down, no down payment during 08. Yeah, we were way wrong about the value. It went way down. It was worth like 110, then 98, and then 79. So 5 years of depreciation. 5 years, it kept going down.
Kept
so
chugging
in
along.
2013, yeah, it's still 79,000 was the lowest it was worth. So 5 years, you know, this was just a crazy time.
Yeah.
And how much money did I lose on that property?
You never sold it.
Never sold it, so I never lost. I still own it to this day. On our planned spreadsheet that we have for selling assets, it is slated to be sold in the summer of this year. And in the summer of this year, we will clear plenty of money to buy 2 homes. And we use this method on all of the properties that we purchase. So I don't have any $30,000 homes anymore. You upgrade, right? You identify homes that aren't performing as well as others, and you keep moving and continuing. So even now, I'm still using those same techniques today to try to do long-term planning.
Yeah.
Long-term planning.
Do you still have that home? Do you still have the home in Florida?
Yeah.
You do?
The 7,000?
No, that one I've sold. So that one,
Not the 7, the original.
yeah. And the other one I sold too. Now that I live here in Texas, the market's so good here.
Yeah.
I've sold all my assets. And plus, when I was in New York City, these places in Florida, that was my only choice. I couldn't afford to do anything in New York City. Good grief.
Yeah.
I mean, the rent alone was insane. So that was the only option I had, was to invest out of state. I am down to 1 property in Florida now because I've transferred all those assets and sold them on schedules to buy assets here in Texas.
Gotcha.
So the 7,000 one, what'd you end up selling it for?
So 4 years later, I sold it for $30,000.
It never changed.
Right. And I'm thankful I got $30,000 out of it, because remember the housing, but it was already such a cheap property. There was nowhere else for it to go.
Was it cash flowing?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it was cash flowing because I paid it all in cash.
Yeah.
I bought it in cash, rehabbed it in cash. And then when I sold it on owner finance note.
Okay. So
I
you're
made
making
money.
there.
I made money on that property. So I did everything wrong on that property, and I still did okay.
Yeah.
I'm a buy and hold investor. That's what I do.
Yeah.
So you saw you guys moved, you said pretty much once a year for 18 years straight, and you watched your uncle, and your uncle kept everything, and you're like, I think I need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to ask this. So what state are you originally from? Because obviously you're in Texas. He's like, I don't know. He said, I don't know.
Yeah. It's hard to say. Like you have you go home for the holidays. My parents still move. They still move. When I met my wife, she had never moved. And then we moved 3 times, and she's like, hey, I'm not cool with this. This is not normal. A normal person doesn't do this. So it's taken me a lot to break it, but she helped me break it. Now that we have a state, this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere.
That's
Do your parents only own like 5 things, so it's not a big hassle to move?
They have a very limited lifestyle. They do.
How many kids do you,
I have an older sister and a younger sister.
Man, that's
So
a
we were
lot to
average 2.5 kid, family of 5, that whole, the average American, my dad was, he was an electrical engineer, and that's why we moved around so much. So like when we lived in Jacksonville, Florida, he worked on floating nuclear power plants. That's what he did. So experimental electrical engineering stuff is what he did. And that's why we moved around so much.
Huh. So as the kids got older, they had a moving crew. Like, all right, kids, grab your stuff. Grab those boxes too.
Let's ask about the schedule you're talking about.
Yeah.
For selling the homes.
Mm-hmm.
What's your what's your schedule like, or how do you put that together?
Yeah, so I'm buy and hold investor. So I'm always looking at a property to keep it and to rent it.
Mhm.
However, I use the Burr Method almost on all my properties at this point. I've gotten so good at it. I come out of pocket very little, and I keep the property for 5 years. That's the initial target, is 5 years. Because after 5 years, I should have about $100,000 in equity in the property. So I'm purchasing properties that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, 250 and under in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is a typical blue-collar rental home. It's a great technique because it's below the median income, below the median average home value. This is exactly where you want to be for long-term rentals. But after 5 years, with that amount of equity, I can now sell the property and buy 2. Or how I did at the beginning when I had lower valued homes, I sold it and upgraded the house into a better home. Now I'm to the place where I'm in the target place. I've learned a lot in the area that I want to be in and the price point I want to be in, so I'm just multiplying. So this year, we'll be selling 2 homes to buy 4. Every 5 years, sell 1 property to buy 2, or if you're somebody different, maybe you only want to buy 1 and live on the rest of it.
Yeah.
So some of these homes, we're going to have more than $100,000 of equity, and we could, in theory, use that income to live on.
So you're eventually, so at some point, let me ask, when you buy 2, so you sell 1 to buy 2, and you're still going to, on the other 2, you're still going to do the same method.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change. And so you're in a even better position. Or do you go, you know what?
Yeah.
We got enough down payment. We'll go ahead and just buy that. That's a good deal. And we'll leave it at that and let it sit for 5 years.
I'm trying to get my wife a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
So I think our relationship is a little different. Like I'll come home, hey, I bought a house today. She's like, oh, that's cool. I won't even tell her. But and this is just the score that we live with, all right? She knows the scoop.
She's like, that's cool.
Yeah, and that's just what it is. So now I'm like, hey, babe, this year we're going to sell one and you're going to go shopping. Oh, all right. Because I want her to be more involved with it. So on one of these, we will be using it.
Are we talking
just
Target or Neiman's?
Standard down payment, yeah. Oh, my wife's got good taste. I'll say she has good taste.
I like that. So it's like just that you get her involved by being
Yeah.
like, hey, we're going to go shopping.
Yeah.
She's like, shopping? Did you say shopping? I love that. So that's cool. So you basically, you map it all out. Hey, where you buy and hold for about 5 years, but you're mapping out on each property, but you're mapping it out. You're getting in cheap. Then you map the whole thing out. You sell it in 5 years and you double. And you just kind of, it's just a spider web of just going.
Yep. So when we're selling 1 to buy 2, that strategy, I don't mind doing the down payment. The standard down payment, 20% down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still doing Burr Method properties. I just bought one Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm still doing that too. So I'm continuing my normal schedule and then the evolved schedule of long-term leveraging. We're adding and we're multiplying.
I like hearing that because everybody has their way of doing stuff, right? There's so many people that this person likes to do this person likes to do that, and just to hear other people's methodology, like that's something that you don't hear all the time. Where it's like, hey, I'm actually, buying burr, I'm burring my way this way, but I'm also selling 1 and buying 2, selling 1, buying 2. Like that's a smart way of doing that. I like that.
It works for me,
Yeah.
and I'm with you too because so many people have different techniques and different strategies. There's no right or wrong.
Right.
But the thing that got me really good at this was networking with other investors. Like the minute I learned, like, oh, I can learn about what I'm doing from other people.
Yeah.
Like this type of a platform, I got really good at picking up properties at a good price, learning how to rehab them effectively. And then this technique, this is not a 5-year technique that I invented.
Yeah.
Brandon Turner showed me this technique.
Yeah.
So, you'll learn all sorts of things from other people, and you just take it for yourself and you figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
So you're selling them on market, of course, to maximize what you can get for them. Are you buying them also on market or off market?
When I'm selling 1 to buy 2, I'm doing on market.
Okay.
On market. The reason why I'm doing the Burr, and the reason why I started with a $7,000 home was because I didn't have any money. So now that my engine is there, it's established, it can support itself. So me putting $20,000 on a property, it's not that big of a deal. Whereas 15 years ago, that was impossible for me to do. I could not do that. Like my home property was $30,000, and that was all my money, right?
Yeah.
So now 20,000 is not that big of a deal, but it took me a long time to get here. But I think, hopefully people listen to this, you can get better. If you can learn what we did in the beginning, you can be even better than me.
Yeah.
And that's the end goal. That's what we're here, right? To help share and give good
Exactly.
information.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to back up a little bit on the, so how you said, obviously as far as mortgage and stuff, where did that come into play? Where you go, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go this direction as far as, get involved in mortgages and become, a lender and all that. Like how'd that play out?
So when I first got started in real estate investing, I went to some banks. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm like, oh, that's illegal. You can't do that. It's not illegal. Come on. They just didn't lend on it, right?
Right.
So the first mortgage company that I worked for, I was recruited. Like, hey, we're going to put you in this executive fast track, da 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 da. I didn't even think it could apply to what I was doing because I was already told from other banks that I went to interview that I couldn't get a loan on it. I didn't know that I could do what I'm doing with a loan until I worked for a broker. A mortgage broker told me and showed me and taught me everything that I needed to know of how to be a successful real estate investor. So then, since that moment, every company I've worked for, I interview from an investor because I want to use their money.
Right.
Here's my list. Can you do this? No seasoning, right? You got no seasoning? Okay. No loan minimum, right? There's no loan minimum here, right? Okay. Because I want to use the money too. And then if I come across a friend that needs help, I work at the employer that can get you a loan. So I'm only working for investor-friendly lenders at this point. But it wasn't like that when I got started. It was just a regular job for me.
Yeah. So that you were, if, at that point, at the beginning, it was just a regular job. You're like, hey, I'm just, it's making money. But then you started to utilize it, leverage it, basically. You're like, hey, I'm going to leverage this. And that was where it really took off.
Yeah. It's like being a property appraiser. You think being a property appraiser would help you be an investor? Absolutely. Or an inspector. So there's things that you can do. I have a regular job. It's a regular W-2 job. But it supports me being a real estate investor.
Yeah. I like that. So you just, and that's, so eventually, because some people, they're like, well, I'll get my license. And others are, well, I'll go into mortgage. And some are like, I'm going to, like you said, a property appraiser. And then you just turn around and you're like, let me just leverage this thing.
Yeah.
So you start leveraging it,
Yeah.
essentially. So, man, so let me ask this. I know the Burr, like some people screw the Burr method up. What do you see just on maybe on the lending side or just in your experience that you've seen just helping different investors where they kind of screw up on the Burr method that they mess up and they could fix?
Sure. Well, I screwed it up too.
Yeah.
Remember? So I bought for 7, put 23 into it's worth 30. That's not right. They're not supposed to do that. So there's so many things. And I talk about the Burr method in an easy way because it's easy to me. It's still hard. I don't want to overplay it. It's still very, very hard. So basically the biggest mistake is that we listen to expert people talk about it in an easy way and we're like, oh, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Without understanding that it's really, really hard to do. Every step is really hard. Finding an off-market property, that's hard by itself. Just that step is really hard.
Yeah.
Finding the right lender, man, who do I go to for that? So the biggest thing I would tell people to do is do just like this. You got to learn from other people who've done the sweat, who've made all the mistakes, and they can refer to you how to form relationships, to find that property, to get the rehab done, to have a reputable contractor, even the insurance step. You got to have builder's risk. Even the insurance person. So lean on other investors to help you with each step in the beginning, and that will help limit your mistakes. Now, I want to make sure to be clear. You're going to make a mistake. Don't be afraid of mistakes. I can teach you everything you need to know, but I can't teach you how to be unfearful. You got to go with no fear. I want you to be educated, but you're going to make a mistake. I still make a mistake now, but I got plenty of money to absorb it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So what about, can I talk about lending for a second? So anything you see, I know when we first met, you were giving us, Misty and I, we got off the phone, like, man, he just explains things really, really well. And so, what do you see that maybe investors trip up on the lending or the mistakes or things like that? Because I'm sure you see all sorts of stuff all the time.
Yeah, I think most of the time I wasn't talking to the best lender or the right lender. I went to my checking and savings account lender, right, and they told me this, and it wasn't right. So having the right place first is the biggest step to help you limit your restrictions that you might have on your loans, okay? At the end, the more you network, the more you learn from other investors, you're going to find out that lending is not that big of a deal. It's basically math. So long as I figure out the math, then I can know what my offer is, what my rehab budget can be. So in the lending world, I'll just summarize it real quick. I classify loans into 2 categories. One conventional lending to portfolioed lending. Okay, so conventional lending to me, and if you go to your bank, hey, which loan type? This is just Andrew's definition, all right? So conventional is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. This is the government stuff. This is long-term loans that are based on my income, but I cash flow best on this side. I'm also more flexible on my loan to value. I can go up to 85% of my loan to value of the actual property value, 85% on my Fannie Freddie side. But if I don't have a regular job, I may not even be able to get this money. And plus, I can't buy with Fannie Freddie. They require a down payment. Portfolio loans, it's everything else because it comes from the lender's own portfolio of money, their money. I got to go to Fannie and Freddie for their money. It's their money. It's their rules. But portfolio, now it's my money. I can do whatever I want. I can be as flexible as I want or as restrictive too. I can be even more restrictive. So in the portfolio world, this is where hard money comes into play, and DSCR loans and commercial loans and bank statements loans and whatever they want to call them. There's tons of them out there. This is money that comes from banks, and this is usually from a smaller local lender. In the beginning, I want to emphasize to try to focus on smaller local community banks for lenders because they're the most flexible. Until you find a good place, this is where we want to target. It's not foolproof, but that's where we want to go. I hope that makes sense how I'm describing it.
No, that makes sense. We just went through that situation with a friend of ours he's buying. He's working to buy 2 properties at the time of this recording. Working to buy 2 properties that got a really good deal on market, and he was going through lenders. I'm like, okay, you need to start. One bank said this and one's that. I'm like, because not every bank has the same appetite for the same thing. They might say, well, we want this or we want that. He ended up with a bank that was a relationship he's already got that he's had for years, and they pretty much pushed the thing through with it. It ended up doing, what was it, a line of
guidance line of
credit instead of.
Cool.
So he kind of got lucky on that and stumbled on that, but it was one of those, where not every lender has the same appetite. We had to figure that out the hard way. I remember like going to Chase Bank and being like, well, I got this. We were very new to this. I got $80,000 in the bank. Why don't you want to loan me anything? It's like, well, sir, your W-2 is non-existent. You're a sole proprietor. Like, well, but I got the money, and then you start. That's when we had to learn the DSCR, all those other loans and all the portfolio loans because we didn't know that stuff. Nobody, we didn't. We started kind of that same, like there wasn't a whole lot out there information wise, so you just didn't have a whole lot. You had to, I know we figured it out on our own a lot, and I wish we would have got around more people earlier because we didn't do that. I think that would have helped make things go faster.
Filling around in the dark.
Yeah. Most of the successful investors that I know do some element of that where they just go out and do it. Action is more important than the education piece of it.
Yeah.
But even a new investor, you need to have 4 lenders because of that capacity. You might find a great cash flowing property that Andrew can't even lend on. So you need to have multiple choices in the beginning. It's hard to know which ones are there. Chase, I don't think I'm talking out of school here. Chase does have portfolio lending.
Do they?
You have to have $250,000 with them.
There's the answer
to get it. It's their own money. They can make whatever rules. This is what portfolio lending is.
I had 80.
You're so close.
I was so close. It was only 80,000. That's all I had.
Big, large national banks to us. These loans are annoying to them.
Yeah.
They don't want them. But to a small local bank, hey, you got a $100,000 loan. That's our week. So the perception is different because of the size.
Yeah, I remember asking Chase, and they were, the banker that we were with, and they were just both staring like I was crazy. I'm like, so we actually turned around and bought a house cash. We're like, all right, well, screw it. You know what? We're just gonna buy. And at that time,
we were just asking for a $100,000 loan, and we had 80 of it.
at that time, but we didn't have W-2s because she worked at Chase for a long time. Is what happened. Misty was at Chase Bank for many, many years, and then eventually, that's when homes were a 1,700 square foot home, and in Crowley was 100,000. It's not now, obviously, but that's when it was. So, well, let me ask this, man. So, what tell us some stories about maybe a certain property that really sticks out in your mind. Maybe something crazy that went on or a mistake that you kind of came across. Like, give us what's something that really over your experience kind of like really sticks out for you.
You want more mistakes?
There's
always
I ask those is because everybody wants to. So many people, like, I know we have our own screw ups. I like to talk about them because everybody talks about like
their wins.
Oh yeah, I made
Slam
200,
dunk.
that was a slam dunk. Within but no one saw what really went on, like all the screw up to get to that slam
Yeah.
dunk. You know?
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't feel the necessary need to talk about successes
Yeah.
because you're right. The more important piece of it is how do I learn the process to be successful?
Mhm.
So me bragging about the profits on a property doesn't help you. Might
Right.
help you get excited, but what can I tell you to help you get better at it? So the first thing that I would encourage any beginner to do is to focus on their own primary home.
Mhm.
Okay, so the primary home step is the easiest way to even figure out if you like real estate. You don't even know you like real estate yet. You don't own any homes. You might hate what we're talking about. So if you own your own primary home and you go through, oh, I got to fix the roof, I got to fix the plumbing. Yeah, it's continual. It's nonstop. Always you have to do something. There's always something
Mhm.
going on. So owning a primary home first, to me, helped me figure out real estate later. And even to this day, we still buy our homes that we live in with the thought that we might rent it. The last home that we lived in, we are renting it. And plus, my primary homes, it's the lowest down payment I can make.
Mhm.
It's the lowest interest rate I can make. So when I have limited funds available to me, that's the right way for me to move. Every other Burr property absolutely has mistakes left and right. They all have mistakes. I can endlessly talk about the mistakes because there's no college for this.
Right.
And who's there with you? So whenever I go look at a property that's an off-market property, I don't have any protection. Like there's no contract that says, hey, you have an option period.
Mhm.
Usually it's like, hey, you got to close in like 8 days. Why 8 days? Because they're getting foreclosed on
Right.
Tuesday. You mean like this Tuesday? Yeah. So the people that we work with, it's frustrating, but they're not good decision makers.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been there. They'd be in a great home. So because they're not good decision makers, you're already up against the gun to try to save them. Because if the bank forecloses on them, this is off-market stuff, right? Because if the bank forecloses on them, everybody loses.
Mhm.
Even the bank loses.
Right.
It's a loss thing for them. So if we can figure out a way to solve the problem, that's better for everybody. And
Yep.
hopefully you can get a good deal on the property. But you're going to have mistakes left and right. The first time I ever did a very large home, it was a sprawling 5-bedroom home, huge, I did everything right, calculated everything, foundation, everything, needed everything. The one thing I didn't know, when you move that foundation of that big of a home, the plumbing in the foundation is going to get wrecked.
Hmm.
Learn that lesson.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a smaller home, maybe it won't because it's smaller square footage, so the foundation is not so large. So now on large homes, I know, okay, if I have to move the foundation or fix the foundation, I should put a plumbing budget for the sewer line and everything that goes through the foundation. You know, a pier and beam home doesn't have this problem because it's pier and beam. It's
Mhm.
elevated. There's no foundation. So there's lots of little things like that. Screening tenants, whenever I first got started, I self-managed properties because, I didn't know what I was doing. But I self-managed. It taught me so much about how to screen tenants, what to look for. Now I use a property manager. I know what to ask them. Talk to me about screening tenants. What do you do when they're late? I know all the questions. So learning it on my own taught me how to interview my vendors as well. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you prefer to use property managers and you don't manage anything on your own. You're like, hey, I'm just here to find the deal, get the contractors in, you guys do your thing, and then let it sit, let it rent for a while, and then eventually sell it off.
I have a regular full-time job
Yeah.
that I love and, well, it's stressful sometimes, but, I enjoy it. I wouldn't work it if I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
My other side hustle, I can't take a phone call at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
or during this podcast. I just can't do it. I have to have somebody else manage the properties for me.
Right.
And the thing that property manager did, which I didn't even anticipate, so none of the screen and all this, they got me more rent. They got me more rent. I was like, hey, this property at $1,400. Oh, no, that's $1,500 at least. You can't get, yes, we can. And they did. So it covered their fee.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm getting them for free. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, and they don't have their heart in it either. Where some people some people they try to manage themselves and they end up with their heart in it and they're like, oh, I feel bad for this individual, and maybe they're next thing you know they're not sending the 3-day notice out that they should have sent and everything else, and then versus the manager is like, we don't care.
Or not increasing the rent.
They're not increasing the rents or whatever. We come across that. I know that we've had some of the stuff that Misty's had to clean up property management wise, where you're going, it's a property manager who didn't do that,
Yep.
but they have the ability. They know, if they know if they're good, you're right. They know, no, we can push that a little bit further, or, but they just don't have the heart in it. They don't have their heart in it because it's strictly business. We're just here for what the contract says,
I want to say something along these lines because I have bought properties where they were under market rent, and the owner was so frustrated that they sold it.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not increasing your rent every year, eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yep.
You have to increase the rent every year, even if
Yeah.
it's a small incremental amount, because otherwise you're going to get tired of the money and the hassle and all the stuff that goes into it, collecting it. You've got to make be as profitable as you can, or else I'm going to come and buy it at a deep discount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure that you increase your rents every year. And there's still some heart stuff here. So all my tenants know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I send them holiday cookies every year.
Mm.
I might give them a little gift card in the summer because the bills are getting high.
Yeah.
They call me and they email me. I want this. This is me. This is how I manage.
Yeah.
What about shielding? I don't care about that because I want if there's a problem, if there's a real problem, I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there is a little problem here and there that I need to get involved with. And we still absolutely think about them with every decision.
Right.
This is not a heartless business.
Mm-hmm.
These are families. Even the previous owners. Sometimes people come to me, Chris, and they're like, hey, man, why don't you do the before and after pictures? That's somebody's house, dude.
Yeah.
And they were in terrible position. And I'm not going to go blast it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever see any of my videos, no addresses are used. I don't show the front of the building. I'm sensitive to everybody about those needs,
Yeah.
Some of these are very difficult positions to be in. So even the tenants, the heart's still there. They can always reach out to me, and we do consider them in all decisions.
Yeah. It's just using the heart less on certain things where you have to, but yeah, I know what you mean. You're basically, you're saying, hey, and I agree, your job is to make sure that they have a good place to live and you take care of them, and that they're, well taken care of, but at the same time, you're not taking advantage of as well, right? You're not like, hey,
Yeah, the cost of everything goes up, so you have to account for that.
Yeah.
If your employer didn't give you a raise for 5 years, you'd be angry and leaving.
Yeah.
So you need to treat this just like business. Business can be, you can care in business. You absolutely can, but it's business.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, you have to do those things because taxes are going to go up, insurance is going to go up,
Water heaters go up.
Water.
And labor goes up.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, everything.
I feel like this is a great time because inflation is a discussionary item right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Inflation is always there. So the call that I get as a loan officer, this is a call that I get. Oh, hey, Andrew, I'm 70. I retired 5 years ago. 5 years ago, everything was cool. But gas went up, and my groceries have gone up, and my income is the same. I need to go backwards on my home and do a cash out refinance for 30 years, even though I had it paid off. And your heart's just like, oh, man, you're even in this spot.
Yeah.
They didn't take into consideration inflation. The average person who retires has about $90,000 in the bank when they retire, 55 to 65. Fidelity did a big study on it last year. $90,000? If you're retiring with $90,000, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You're
It's
not
enough.
going to make it. You've got to come up with a different plan. That's what real estate is. We increase our rents every year to battle inflation. That's what it's there for. So all of these things that come into play, you have to increase rents. You're looking at this long term. At least I am. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. That's got to hurt to hear somebody say, I can't live. I need to,
Yeah.
hey, can I do a cash out refinance just to be able to survive? That's got to be a rough one to hear, to go, man, that's, I couldn't even imagine having to do that.
Yeah. Sometimes these discussions that you have with people, I mean, they're real. These
Yeah.
are real people, everyday people, and they, you wish everybody was really smart and can make good decisions, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. But you get to come in and help those that otherwise didn't make the good decisions, and that becomes part of it sometimes. Yeah, I'm sure that you probably have a few that drag their feet over time where you're like, man, I could, yes, you're going to make money from it, obviously, but that's also, you're making money because of what you took the risk, right? You took the risk, so you get to make the money, but at the same time, you get to help them as well.
Sometimes it's too late though, and those are the really hard ones.
Yeah. Do you just out of curiosity, do you prefer do you have a certain kind of area? And I'm not saying how you get to them, but do you like dealing more with the foreclosures? Do you like dealing
Mm,
more with certain, like, you know, like everybody has a certain thing. I know for Misty and I, we relate to individuals who are older. You know, like that's kind of been our little area that we like to spend more time in. I just like older people. It's more fun. I don't like my age
You
group.
like stories.
Yeah, I love
yeah.
stories and stuff. Like, do you have like, as far as like when it comes to those, you know, and I'm not saying that you target this person off market, but you know, do you prefer working with foreclosures or any
hmm
particular type? Like, what do you like the
I'll tell you
most?
exactly how it works with me. So I'm a regular W-2 job, right?
Yeah.
That's my full-time job, more than full-time job. I can't self-source anything. I
Mm,
can't self-source anything. I have to rely on wholesalers.
gotcha.
So whatever they bring me is what I get, which means sometimes I don't get the best deals because if they are the best deals, they're keeping them.
Right.
I have borderline deals. That's usually just what I get because I can't self-source. I just cannot do it.
And
Yeah.
still successful.
And still fine. Still very fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because of that, that's a good point, especially because some people may hear this. They're like, well, how do I get in? And, you know, and for you, you have a full-time job and you're like, well, I can still do it. I just have to go with wholesalers. And so, which I'm sure was that a learning curve for you? You feel that you're having to know, man, that's a good deal. That's not a good deal. Made a mistake here. Because I know some people hear wholesale and they're not every wholesale, like Robin, for example, talk to Robin. Robin is a good hearted guy. You know, he doesn't seem like the person who's going to try to, snake you. Right.
hmm
I know Robin talks about the snake, and then you got those snakes out there. Was there a learning curve to try to figure out like that dude's a snake? Let's not mess with him or, you
I'll
know,
work with a snake.
you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just not budging for my numbers, though. My
Right.
numbers are just what they are.
Right.
So there's been plenty of times where there's been a property that had a huge budget of rehab, and I'm the only person that even made an offer.
Mm.
And then the wholesale, hey man, we can't take that offer. All right, cool. I understand your position. Go back to the seller and renegotiate with them because I'm the only one that you're calling, aren't I? Yeah.
He
So
knows.
if you want to make this work, go back to them and renegotiate the contract more. So it goes both ways. This is
Yeah.
still, remember, it's business. I make about 100 offers a year,
Mhm.
and I do 2, maybe 3 Burr Method properties.
Mhm.
So just the fact of just offering is almost a job by itself because I still have to know how to calculate my after repair value. And if you're not in Texas, it's hard to do that here. It's
Yeah.
private information. Okay, so I can't go to Zillow and figure it out or other websites. So I have to know my after repair value. That's a skill set you'll need to know if you're doing the Burr Method. And then I have to be able to calculate my rehab budget on my own without help. Because
Mhm.
sometimes my offer is due in an hour,
Yeah.
and my contractor's in who knows where on a job.
Hey, that spreadsheet you have, that was killer. You were reading my language. I love spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet fanatic, and I was just looking at that thing, going, "Man, this thing is a monster, Misty. Keep that paper." I want to. I didn't ask you for it because I was like, I want to go recreate it myself. I love like punching it in and putting it together. I was like, I just wanted to go like. I know you're like, hey, we'll give you the spreadsheet. But I was like, I just want to go in here and redo this myself out of just sheer being able to rebuild it and be like, here you go.
Intrigue.
It was intriguing. The way you set it up, that was awesome.
The person who gave me that spreadsheet was a contractor,
Was it?
and I remade it.
Yeah.
So hey, here's how we do it. Cool. Do you mind sending that to me? All right. And I used them on a job. I just remade it. So all of these things we learn from each other.
Yeah.
There's no college for this. What we're doing, we have to lean on each other to get better at it.
Yeah. That spreadsheet was killer. So you can smell on the wholesaler when you're the only one. You're like, I'm the only one here. I
Mhm.
can smell it. You better go back.
Yep.
And you better You better change that. You better renegotiate that.
I've had a wholesaler wholesale me another wholesaler's deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they did go back to renegotiate, because I'm only sticking to my numbers, this is my offer. When I saw the final settlement spreadsheet, that's, the HUD statement, I saw, oh, there's 2 wholesalers. And then the wholesaler, the second, the in-between wholesaler, they only made $1,000. I was like, I wonder if they went back to the owner to renegotiate or to that wholesaler in the middle.
Mm.
Who knows how it worked, but whatever it did, it worked out for me.
Yeah. Didn't matter who made what, but I know I made that.
That's right. And it's a great rental. I never regret any of the properties that I've ever purchased.
So I'm curious, just is there a certain point, like, just kind of the way you've talked about it, like very obviously very systematic. You guys, I mean, you mentioned the asset spreadsheet and things. Is there a certain point where you are going to say, this is about where I want to get to, and live, and just say I'm going to go and start living on everything? Or are you just like, I'm going to gobble it all up as much as I can until finally I'm done being in the business that I'm in?
Yeah, I have such a good time with what I do.
Yeah.
It would be hard for me to think about not being a loan officer anymore.
Right.
So as far as I can tell, I've got 20 years left to work. That'll put me at 65. So I want to have all my properties paid off in 20 years, and then that'll be good.
So do you try just, I know, like, because Robin talks about this, I don't know if, it's part of your strategy. So you work to pay everything off, or you kind of steamrolling it in as you go, where you're like, what, we'll snowball it as you do your method where it's like 1 by 2, and then are you starting to snowball from there pretty much?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I want to expound on this. So I have a regular W-2 job. I'm emphasizing this so clearly because I want to just be, I get people who call me like, hey, I want to quit my work and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. Hey, if you hate your job, that's a different discussion.
Right.
We should really tackle that more, Like, well, my family's dysfunctional. Okay, well, having money might make it more dysfunctional. Like, real estate doesn't solve these things.
Makes it worse.
Yeah. So let's take a step back here, because there's plenty of people that I know who have make $40,000, $50,000 jobs and working at charities, and they have several rental properties.
Right.
They have a great life. They're happy, and they're very successful with real estate. So because of my job, it allows me to keep my cash flow to a minimum on my properties.
Mm-hmm.
My true cash flow is my job. That's what I pay my bills with. That's what we travel with and live a lifestyle with, is my job. And my properties feed itself. So as long as I can keep that engine separate, I've never taken a cash out loan. Because I don't want to take a cash out loan, because in 5 years I'm selling it anyway. Sometimes I have to keep it longer, or I want to keep it longer. That's cool, but no cash out loans, because that's extra closing costs for me to pay. And I only get a limited amount of the money of the property.
Right.
So there's several properties that I have that are 50% loan to value. I'm totally okay with that. If I ever need anything, I can use it, but I want to keep that entity separate, functioning on its own, being profitable, so that when I do retire, they're all paid off.
Yeah. So eventually, I like that. So obviously, there's nothing in the books to say I'm going to do it at this time, but you're keeping them separate, and like you said, you're stressing, like, you still have your regular W-2 job, and anybody can do this at that. If you have a W-2 job, whether they're making 50,000 or they're making 40,000 or whatever, you can always go and do just that.
Yeah.
And so, that makes sense. You're not like, hey, at this time I'm going to quit and I'm out. You're letting it fund itself and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And then eventually, so you mentioned you never do cash out refinance. Let's kind of go through that a little bit. So I know some people, when they Burr method, they burr and they take some people will actually cash out. So for you don't do that part. Kind of go through that a little bit.
So there's a structuring thing here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do a cash out refinance because there's no need to do a cash out refinance.
Mm-hmm.
When I do a cash out refinance with the Burr method, I'm hitting walls like seasoning or limits. So usually what I do is I go to my hard money lender in the beginning. Yeah, I know it's a high rate, but just hang tight with me. There's a reason why I use hard money.
Yeah.
I don't come out of pocket when I use hard money. And then I refinance long term. So I'm not coming out of pocket. I go to my hard money lender. Hey, man, lend me 75% of the after repair value. 75. I don't want this 90% purchase down. No. 75%. Oh, you can't do 75%? I'm going to go to somebody else. 75%. If I can do 75% when I do my refinance on the long-term thing, I don't need a cash out loan because I used all this money over here. And then I can go up to 80% on my standard refinance, my long-term refinance, the third R in the Burr. And I'm not coming out of pocket. I'm rolling in closing costs. Any other structuring that anybody's doing, you're going to leave money in the deal. You're going to leave money in the deal, because if I do a cash out refinance on that third R step, the refinance step, I'm either facing a limitation, because most of them are 75% of the loan to value. Especially right now, if I'm using a DSCR loan and the rates are so high, I can't go that high because the rents aren't there yet. The rate, I need a cash flow. They tell me, hey, $1, I can't do it. I can't even take cash out.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do a no cash out refinance and take out as much money as I can in the beginning, that allows me to leverage better and I can maximize my profits. I come out of pocket less. Trust me on this, for 22 something years, I've been doing it
Yeah.
this way because I know how little money I started with. How do I make sure I can still do it with as little out of pocket? Take as much money up front. That's how I do it. And that's why I never do a cash out loan.
Yeah. And do you find some hard money lenders or some hard money lenders are like any other lender? They're just
Yep.
different. They're like, hey, this one requires a down payment. These people want, they want this with a down payment. These are like, look, we'll fund repairs. You can go ham on that thing, kind of go through that. So you find that they're a little bit different
Yes.
each.
It's
not the
just
same.
like everything else. And the only way I found my hard money lenders that I use now is from networking with other real estate investors.
Mhm.
Through that, I have found the best partners that I can find, the most aggressive that I can find, and the ones that allow me to buy as many properties with a little out of pocket as I can. Through
Yeah.
other investors showed me who they were.
So when you say a little out of pocket, sometimes you're out of pocket on some repairs, but not all? Just,
I've come out of pocket $2,000 on a property.
yeah.
I purchased a property for $2,000, $3,000, $7,000.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are some numbers that I have come total out of pocket. Closing costs, holding costs, refinance, $3,000 to $7,000. That was my target in the very beginning. That's why I was only doing this a couple a year, because I had to do that because I didn't have any money.
Yeah. It forced you to get creative.
Yeah, man. Of
Very
course, you get good.
Yeah. Get good and get creative on how to do things. So I got a question, because obviously we're talking about lending and stuff as well. And right now interest rates are high. But there's a lot of things, even on MLS, where people are dropping their price.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of go through, like, what are you seeing on your end with that? Because that's something where, I know we've seen that, where you have someone there 25,000 below, what it could be, or even price $50,000. We saw that one 50,000 below what it should be worth, and then even still dropping more, But the interest rate's high. Obviously you can always change that interest rate later on down the road. What are you seeing on that end as far as high interest rates, but prices are just
Yeah.
dropping?
As a loan officer, I see all the contracts. They're all coming in below appraisal value right now.
Mhm.
All of them. So then what I tell to an investor is like, oh man, I'm not cash flowing anything. All right, what was your cash flow you were hoping to get? I don't know, $200 a month. All right, so that's $2,400 a year. Make your offer $5,000 less.
Yeah.
Oh, and they don't want to play ball? You're one of, like, there's 8 properties per buyer right now. Just go to somebody else. And that's what they are. And we've seen $50,000 below appraisal offers, contracts that are coming in great. Sellers are now paying concessions.
Mhm.
Oh, we want rates to be so low again. Well, remember, a year ago or 2 years ago, you had to come out of pocket like $80,000, $90,000 to even get a home.
Right.
Remember that? It was impossible.
Mhm.
I
So there
remember.
needs to be a balance. You can't just have them both. Right now, the power is in the buyer.
Mhm.
They have the negotiating power. It may not be like that for very long,
Right.
because we're already noticing that rates have stabilized. They've come down a little bit. They come down much further, you might miss the window.
Shift.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're gonna end up having to. This is the chance for those people that in 2020 to get back to what they did, what they came out of pocket.
Yeah.
They're like, we're getting back what I had.
hmm I feel like, too, so cash flow is a recent discussion. When I started this, cash flow was not the way you made money as a real estate investor. You made money flipping,
Mhm.
and you kept properties for long term on the appreciation. So me making $100,000 in 5 years of appreciation, that will trump any cash flow that you calculate.
Man, that makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
I know, no, I mean, not. Everybody has their strategy, but I know we're very appreciation heavy. That's
Yeah.
the way we invest. And right now, obviously, with 8% and things like that, you're not. Some of those interest rates, you're not going to cash flow. You might get, or you get really close to it, or it's just super skinny. And I've had to have that conversation with, a few people, like, hey, look, you might not cash flow right now, or
After a
it
few
might,
years, it'll be better.
but in a few years, but what you're losing out, and what you might have to pay in a little bit, you're getting this much in appreciation,
Mhm.
and then what you're going to get if they're using your math of 5 years, and then they want to sell it, that's going to be so much better. That to me is worth paying a couple $100 a month on a house. I'm okay with that. It's nice to hear that. So kind of, you when you started, it was one of those situations where cash flow wasn't the big deal.
Yeah, that's right.
People just bought for appreciation. It was just a
Mhm.
place to park their money,
Yep.
basically, right?
Yep.
And then if you weren't, and that was what they considered the buy and hold investor.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think changed? What do you think made people start talking about cash flow, or made people say, man, they focus more on it?
We had such a great economy for so long.
Yeah.
Now we're realizing, oh man, 4 or 5 years ago was really nice. Yeah, it was. But 10 years before that, it wasn't even that nice. So we had like 10 years of growth and capital gains and all this great stuff, appreciation, job growth, all this good stuff economy-wise. So now I can charge more, and the interest rates and loans are so much less. Cash flow became an issue. It was not that way in the early 2000s when I was borrowing money at 7% then, and that was good.
Yeah.
So at 7%, you knew you couldn't cash flow in the middle of the 2000s. After the housing crisis, rates were crazy again. You couldn't cash flow until about like 2013 or 2014 when it started becoming a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So now builders weren't building any homes anymore. They cut down because they got burned so bad or they went under.
Yeah.
So the shortage of housing made it so that we can now charge more on our rents. Cash flow became a discussion. If you're sitting out there and you're listening, you're saying, well, I still want to wait. If you wait for cash flow, I might not see you for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
I'm making millions while you're waiting. Do not wait. Warren Buffett says don't time the market. He's a billionaire. He's got to know something.
Yeah.
Don't time the market. He also says don't lose money either, right? We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but if I told you, hey, $50 a month, you'll be a millionaire, would you do it? Of course you would. Of course you would. So even if you're skinny a little bit on a property, this is why having a regular job helps me. That's my cash flow. So I'm using a little bit less on a property or two. But now I've got so many properties, even if I do lose a little bit on one or two, the other ones are holding it up, And you'll get there too if you stick with it long enough. 1 or 2 properties a year. It doesn't sound sexy.
Right.
This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. But you're going to have generational wealth. When I pass, everybody in my family gets a house.
Yep.
That's a pretty good feeling.
Feel like Oprah.
Oh, that's right. You get a house, and you get a house, and you get a house. Yeah.
We'll all get a house.
That's right. That's
Every
right.
single one of you. I think my last name just changed. What's that story anymore? Misty, yours too?
So have you seen anything coming across for loan assumptions or?
No, not really. So on my side, I don't see those things. All right. Now, usually on my side, people are refinancing out of a crazy loan or a crazy scenario that somebody had. Usually, if I'm getting ultra creative right now, like if I'm assuming a loan, that means there's not a lot of equity in it. And to me, that's not a good position to be in. Because what if it doesn't work out? We think that everything is going to be going fine here for the next few months, but what if it doesn't and you don't have a lot of equity in your home? Because if you do have a lot of equity, there's no reason not to refinance into a loan that works. If it doesn't work with the standard going rate and under the standard methods, I would almost encourage you to think about something different. Because if I have to get creative on a marginal deal to make it work, I can do that because I have enough support in my properties to do it. But if that's all that you do, you might get a little caught there. So on my first few deals, they weren't done right. If it's your first deal and you want to assume something, that's cool. But just don't make a habit out of it. That's my advice on that scenario.
Assuming, yeah. On assuming loans, basically. So, man, the way you explain just kind of the Burr method and stuff and the hard money, that's something I think is super valuable. Anybody that's listening to that, like the way you kind of explain that, and of course, going through, that every lender has a different appetite. That's something that I feel like some people don't realize when they get into this. I know we had to learn it the hard way that every lender is different. Everybody has their own, way of looking, and then the equity too. That's something that I think, because we started obviously years after you started, and for us, we didn't have anybody to tell us this is what you need to do. I just remember looking and going, man, I can make this much money if I just sit on this thing, and but I never see it. Obviously, just drive by it, and there it is. But it's nice to hear. It's refreshing to hear somebody say, "Hey, this is actually. It's not about the cash flow. The equity is where it's really at. That's where you can get the tenfold. Like you said, $50 for to become a millionaire. I would pay that.
Sure.
I would pay that any day of the week. I love that. That's something I feel like is not talked about enough. Especially now, you don't, even just social media, you don't see it. You don't see a whole lot of, equity. It's always, I agree with you. It's always cash flow. It's just somebody wanting to say, oh, well, you know, you got to make this much money. But I remember, I think, what was it, that one house we bought? We bought it top of market, and I think we made $50
Yeah.
a
It
month.
was
You know,
small.
I was just like, I hope nothing happens to this thing.
Hope
we try,
nothing breaks.
yeah, we try to run the same thing. We try to help it fund itself. So we're like, please, nothing. It took a while, right?
Yeah.
Like 2 years, and then something finally broke. What was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
No. Yeah. It took a little while. Then eventually something broke, and we're like, okay. But by the time there's something we did to do repairs, it was
Rents had gone up.
the rents had gone up. But that thing, I think, is cash flowing. Was it 400 now?
Hmm.
Somewhere in there. But for that $50, and that's hard to explain to someone who's new, you know, because they're just thinking in their mind like,
It's
I
not going to
gotta-
be that way for the next 30 years.
yeah. And I agree. Investing is not sexy to any degree. There's nothing. I'm with you on the 2 or 3 properties a year. You know, you don't have to. You're not having to get a race to 100 or race to 3,000. It's just you're doing your own race essentially. That's what it sounds like you're doing as well. You're on your own race. I like that. You know, you're equity driven and doing your race, and it doesn't matter if you're going to pay $50 in for a little while. You know, you'll turn it over eventually.
Yeah, long term. Most of the successful real estate investors I know, they do 2 things. They live below their means, and they think about it long term. Those are the 2 biggest things I would suggest to anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Live below your means and think about it long term.
They don't lose money. I love it, man. So, any other stories you want to, anything you want to share as far as just other experience you've got, or anything that you're like, hey, man, this is something that, you got a crazy story for us? I know we talked about filling a pool in and the other day,
Yeah, I've got eviction stories and, extremely large tenants that break the toilets and stuff like, I got all those
Let's
things.
go with eviction.
Yeah. Well,
I already spun the wheel. Give me eviction.
right,
No.
right. So, on the crazy story side, at this point in my career, I have a property manager that shields me from a lot of these things, right?
Gotcha.
So not only do I lean on them for the eviction process if there's something that comes up, but frankly, they've been so good at screening. The evictions that I've had to handle, Chris, are on my new acquisitions.
Mm.
So whenever I
Yeah.
purchase a property and that has a tenant in there, I'm really shy on those deals because I know that they have rights and they can stay for a while. Now, Texas is a little bit more friendly than other states, but it still is a more cost that could occur. And every time that I've ever inherited a tenant, they have incurred more cost to me because
Right.
we've had to evict or at least threaten to evict. Like I bought a property right when COVID hit. We were under contract before COVID, and then it got delayed a little bit. And then by the time we closed, COVID had already hit. You
Mm.
can't even evict.
Yeah.
You couldn't even evict. So there, again, my property manager, they were guiding me on the right thing. Hey, we're going to listen to them. We're going to be sensitive because if we have to go before the judge is going to ask, hey, did you try to work it out? And if we say no, they're going to push back a little bit. So we tried to work it out and it didn't work. And the minute we threatened to evict, they left. So on that one, we didn't even have to go. I've been sued. How about this
Yeah.
one? Sued on a property fence line. So in Texas, there are a lot of properties. They share a fence line. They're on
Mhm.
both property sides. So I replaced fence on a home, and the property behind me didn't like it, and they sued me.
They didn't like the fence, like the way it looked, or
Yeah,
just
all of that. Yeah, that was my grandfather's fence that he built, and it was this old shoddy aluminum chain link fence.
it was falling down, or just
Oh yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, the house is empty. There's nobody even living there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And okay, maybe I could have sent the guy a letter. I probably could have handled a little bit, less than, but I just replaced it. I was like, hey, I'm putting a nice wooden fence there. It's gonna look good.
Did you say, oh, by the way, here's your 50% of the bill?
Oh right. I honestly don't even do.
You drop it off at court.
We
slide
did
across
knock
the
at the
table.
home. We so on this one, there's a fence that was shared by 3 different properties. Knocked on all the homes. Got the permission from both of the neighbors next to them, and I'm in a place now. I'm not gonna split. I'm just
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not worth the hassle, right?
And and plus it's like, why is a millionaire begging you for $500?
Right.
It doesn't feel right, But the house behind us was completely empty. Like, all right, well, we'll just skip it and just replace it. That's the guy that sued me. Doesn't even live in the home. In the old, anyway.
Little did you know.
Yeah. So I could have sent him a letter, but I wasn't going to wait. I was still going to replace it no matter what.
Mhm.
Okay. So we weren't going to wait on it. And these are all things that just occur. So if you're a business owner, like, oh, what about shielding and LLC stuff? I've got story after story. I know plenty of people who've been sued that have all their properties in an LLC and do shielding. I've spoken to so many attorneys who say they can get around that in like 3 seconds. So if you're in fault, you're still going to pay. So having an LLC in your company doesn't absolve you from being responsible for what you need to do. Okay, so some of my properties are in LLC, some of them are my personal name. Like my property in Florida. In Florida, if you change it from your personal name to your LLC, they tax you. They tax you to do it. They have a transfer tax. Same in New York, transfer tax. So, and though my property's in Florida, I always kept them in my personal name because I didn't want to pay the extra bill to change them over.
Yeah.
But these are little things here and there.
Did you ever buy in New York while you were there?
Could never afford to.
Yeah.
No. Oh, man. So I gave a loan to some dude, the biggest loan I ever gave. His closing costs were $60,000, $60,000, and I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God! And this is a guy that lived on Staten Island, and I was like, oh man, people are weird on Staten Island to begin with. They're weird already. If you lived on Staten Island, if you know anything about New York, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I go, here's your loan. He's like, oh wow, this is much cheaper than the other place. I'm like, what planet am I in where this is cheap? And he went with it, So anyway, it's just a different planet up there, completely different planet. The best party I ever went to, I went to Calvin Klein's house for a party. He threw a house party. And living in New York City teaches you that you have no money. You're poor. You're the poorest of poor people. You think you're wealthy. You have nothing. You don't have anything. So I go to Calvin Klein's house. I'm like, gosh, this is so just, it's incredible. He had an 800 series BMW before it was out.
Dang.
He had it before it was released. That was the most shocking thing. All the Warhols, he had paintings of himself from fame. Like, how'd you get this? How'd you get this BMW? And that's how, when you're a billionaire, you just get things. And then you're just a little of me, and you're like, oh, I'm just a little insignificant of me. So it teaches you to stay a little humble, too.
When I think New York, I think, hey, I'm walking here. Like, slapping on a taxi.
Yeah, that happens. That certainly does.
The only time I've been in New York was visiting for like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. That's that. But it was never long enough to
it's just an overnight.
Yeah, it was never long enough to experience the, hey, I'm walking here, but the fast pace. So I don't have as much reference to it. But I mean, just the closing costs, $60,000, and then thinking that's cheaper. That's wild.
My wife and I, we lived in a 220 square foot apartment.
Oh, wow.
And people were jealous of us. Yeah, it's like this room. Because we had 3 windows. One of them you could peer around. You could almost see the river. Oh, there's the river. And we had a full-size refrigerator. Some of my friends didn't have a full-size refrigerator because their apartments were so small.
Yeah.
So even that 220 square foot apartment, people were jealous of us.
You were the place to party, man.
Oh, you don't go to anybody's house in New York City.
No.
No, you don't live there to have house parties. No, it's not like that at all.
So you're telling me the guy that stops people in New York City and says, show me your place, is all staged?
Well, he might
I'm
be
joking.
seeing some things that you and I couldn't do. That's the thing about there. It's like, so I had a buddy, because whenever anybody came to visit, I'm like, all right, you're going to go see your touristy thing, but I'm going to show you real New York on your second day. First day is touristy, second day, and everybody always enjoyed the second day because you got to see. So my buddies came up to visit me. He said, hey, we're going to go out to the meatpacking district, go to some clubs. I'm like, all right, let me tell you which one to go. No, we'll do it. I'm like, no, man, let me tell you which ones. Oh, no, we'll figure it out. All right. He comes back like 4 hours later. He's like, man, nobody would let me in. I'm like, I know, man. I tried to tell you. Well, I tried to, the bouncer was $400. Like, nobody cares about your $400. Nobody even cares. Like, I went to Tim Robbins' private bar. He had a bar, like a bar, a full bar. It was a tea room. He didn't make any money on it. There was no admission. The only people who could get in, you had to know him.
Wow.
It's just money he's just throwing away.
Yeah.
Because he's such a, again, it's so much opulence and wealth up there. It's very difficult to understand if you're not from there.
So what made you come to Texas? What was it that just said, hey?
Oh, well, the mortgage company I worked for at the time, they were like, hey, we're going to go open a branch in Texas. Do you want to go to Texas? I was like, no, I don't want to go to Texas. And then they said, well, there's more housing in Texas than all of New York and New Jersey combined. I was like, oh, really? So yeah, just go down there for 1 year and come back. Cool. And
Yeah.
here we are, 11 years later.
Maybe you're like, honey, we're not going back to that place.
Oh, it was not me, Chris.
Oh, it wasn't?
It was her.
Oh,
She was like, hey, we're not going back to that place.
She's like, look at all this space.
Yeah.
so much. It's like Step Brothers. So much room for activity.
Yeah. And there's no snow here, you know?
Yeah.
Like winter here is like 3 days long.
You're trying to cross the street, and instead of being like, I'm walking here, they're like, I'm sorry, ma'am. Excuse me. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
almost run you over.
I mean, we miss the water, you know, we do miss the water. And there's
Yeah.
no Italian food, even though people try to tell us there's Italian food. There's not. But there's great barbecue and other things, you know. So I feel like New York City had an identity and a pulse. You know, like New Orleans has an identity and a pulse. Dallas doesn't really have, I mean, well, they got the Cowboys. I mean, what's the identity of Dallas?
Yeah.
I mean, Fort Worth has more of an identity, but I mean, it's a great place to raise a family, and jobs here are great, and so is the real estate market. We're the 4th largest metro in the whole country,
Mm-hmm.
and you better believe we have a lower commute time than any other metro. We have a more affordable housing market than any other metro. You go to San Francisco and see how long you stay in traffic. Say what it's like to buy a house in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
are fortunate in this place. Now, the secret's out. People are coming here.
Right.
People like me, you know? And that's why some people who've been here for a long time are like, oh, I can't stand how it's changed. I'm like, just hang on to your hat, because it's going to continue to change for a long time.
Well, even here, I mean, Dallas Fort Worth is different, right? Because Fort Worth to me is like that old money. You know, you see expensive cars, but they're usually going to be Rovers and Porsches, and you're not going to see
Lamborghinis.
I mean, Dallas though, that's where you see the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis. You see it's the fast money, totally different game. And then of course their landlord, it's a little bit different as far as they're more. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Fort Worth's a little more pro landlord, whereas like Dallas is a little more pro tenant. So they're just like two different areas. But you're right, the identity is Cowtown versus Dallas.
The reason why my wife and I live in Fort Worth is because when we got here, I'm like, what's Dallas compared to New York City? But in Fort Worth, they march cows through the street and ride horses.
Yeah.
Let's live there. So anybody that comes to visit us, they're like, well, this place is great, you know? I mean, we take them to the stockyards and all that kind of stuff. It's great. We like it a lot.
And then are you guys the Tame Stockyards, but on a regular, you're like, we don't go there.
No, we don't. We don't.
That's us. We're like, we don't really ever go there. Y'all want to go there? It's your first time?
Yeah. Even the barbecue place we go to, we don't go there on our own because it's for show. It's a good place. They have good barbecue. But
Yeah.
if you're from out of town, like, wow, this is crazy. But we always go to the better.
Meanwhile, you go down to Magnolia.
yeah, we go to the good places.
Yeah, we go down to Magnolia to get some food. Yeah, definitely different. I've always, and I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know for Misty, and I'm always like, Misty, let's buy in Dallas County. I just kind of like whisper, like, she's like, no, I'm not screwing with Dallas County. Do you feel that same way, or do you kind of like, hey, I don't want to mess with, especially after what they did with COVID, or do you have certain areas you're like, I want to buy, or would you go further out, or?
I lean on my property manager for this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I bought some properties in Waxahachie, which if you're not familiar, it's like 45 minutes, maybe an hour south of some parts of the metro area. I call my property manager, hey, what do you think? Do you guys manage here? We do manage there. We're doing very well there. Great. Now I have 5 properties in Waxahachie.
Yeah.
Hey, what about this part of Dallas? No, we don't do that.
Right.
So there are places in Dallas where the cops won't respond to calls.
Yep.
So I lean on their expertise about this. There's a couple of cities where they have harsh inspections for rental properties, and I lean on my property manager for their expert opinion about where to go.
You have them tell you.
Yep. If they say no, I'm not buying.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you'll give it a process for you. You give it a wholesaler. They say, you look at the deal, and then you ask the property manager, hey, this just came up. You guys think it's worth it? And I'll say, yeah, man, dude, we're killing it in that city. And then you're like, okay, cool. And then you turn around, run your spreadsheet, numbers. Okay, cool. All right, here's the offer. I think it's good. Or if they say no, then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna pass it up.
I'll even do zip code too. So like, I'm familiar with a lot of places.
Yeah.
But certain zip codes, hey buddy, what about this zip code? Nope. What about this one? Cool. And that's why I'll entertain offers.
Yeah. So you that's how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, man. I think your story is just inspiring for those that otherwise they have a W-2, and I think that's pretty much almost all of us at some point, right? We all have a job of some sort that we can't get out of. That you're like, hey, I can still do this on the side. And most people, they think, oh, well, I've got to be full time, or, but you don't have to be. And then,
Or that they work full time. They don't have the time to do it.
yeah, or absolutely. They work full time. They don't have the time to do it. So,
And you lean on your partners for that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a Marine, right? So I served in the Marines in the 90s. I got some Marine buddies who just can't work for anybody. They just can't. I understand that. So if you want to go into business for yourself, that's cool. But I want to emphasize again, though, if you're unsatisfied at your job, let's address that and get in a good place, and then use real estate as a sidebar, because that's everybody's story is different. This is mine,
right.
but you can absolutely have a great career and use real estate on the side and be extraordinarily well off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. But man, I love it. I appreciate you coming out. Contact, man, if you want to share your contact information, and of course, if you guys have any lending needs, and maybe you're an investor and you need help, getting your Burr strategy right and doing that stuff. So definitely Andrew can help you. So if you want to share your contact information, and how can they reach you, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks. So I do every 2 weeks I'm doing 22 minutes online for free through Meetup. I'm on Instagram under Andrew Postell, or Drew P for VP is my Instagram handle. Andrew Postell is my Facebook page. You can just Google Andrew Postell. You can email me. Certainly willing to share up my Excel spreadsheet for my rehab. I'm an open book. All right. So at this point in my career, whatever I can do to help, I'm willing to help. There's nothing that I want from you. There's no sales pitch here. We'd love to do a loan, but if it's just you need help and guidance, reach out, and I'm here to share anything I got.
And I know you move around too a lot. I see you just on Facebook. You go to a lot of different meetups too as well. So
still learning.
Yep, still learning. I see all the time. He's like, another meetup, and I love it. So guys,
you have your videos you do as well.
Yep.
Yep. I do a Drew 2 minutes or less every day, just some quick real estate stuff. And my every 2 weeks is 22 minutes. It's in the middle of the day. It's at 2:00 on Tuesdays. All this Drew 2 messaging, but they say it's supposed to be effective. Okay, I'll buy it. But 22 minutes, and then you're on back to your work day. So if you have time to do it, every other Tuesday I do something for 22 minutes.
That's awesome. Sounds good. Well, guys, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. Andrew, thanks for coming out. Love to have you back on again. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you.